All right, great. Well, thanks, Tom, so much for having me. I believe you were when we first started. We were just starting with the Smart package where we provided local support here at Hemlane.
Yep.
And so you were not one of our first users, I would say, but one of the first in many markets, including I think Muncie, Indiana. So would love to hear how it's going with Hemlane and ask you a couple of questions about your experience using our product, if that works for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So let's just start with the whole rental life cycle. So I'd love to start with the leasing process, finding and placing tenants. Before Hemlane, what were you doing to help find and place tenants for your property?
Yeah. Geez, it's really night and day in terms of Hemlane and the traditional process. And I wouldn't think it would be that much of a contrast, but it really is favoring Hemlane. And so traditionally, I've seen it be as little as half first month rent up to 1.5 times first month rent in a traditional property manager. So they do the marketing, the screening, and all that for you. What's fascinating is with Hemlane, they help you find local agents, right? Which is nice. So essentially, it's the same thing. You can negotiate your rate. Usually, it is the industry standard of 1 month rent, which I think is fair. But what I like about it, and this might not be for everyone, but I actually like to know who's going in my property. And I find that with traditional property managers, they're reluctant to share that information. And I've had enough bad experiences with traditional managers where I'm turning a property every 6 to 9 months because of the bad selection. And so with Hemlane, in fact, I have one right now that I'm going through. The agent and I are very close. She's fantastic. And I get to see who is going into my property. And I like that more than just willy-nilly not knowing what's going on. So
Yep.
yeah, go ahead.
Or even applicants, right? A lot of times when there's vacancy, one thing I noticed as well is when an owner doesn't, when they have a vacancy over 2 months, being able to understand why. Is it that I'm not getting enough leads,
Oh
or
yeah.
am I getting leads but they're not qualified? Or am I getting leads that go to the property and there's something wrong with the property and that's why they're not converting, or potentially something wrong with the agent, right? And that's why they're not
Yeah,
converting
two
for that
two big
data.
benefits with Hemlane. And again, I'm a believer in it. Believer in it. I push this to all my clients who want to do it. But and I know you're the CEO, but you know, just speaking transparently, you get two big benefits with the leasing process with Hemlane. One, I've noticed my turn times are much shorter, right? So, and two, I'm just much more closer to the action. So I know exactly what's causing issues if there's delays. It's just it's a more transparent process that I think ultimately results in a faster turn time.
Yeah, great. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that. We try to get those metrics on turn times and the difference, but it's really hard to get traditional property managers' turn times. We can get everything from our own data, so it's
sure.
hard to compare. So it's good to know that. Then walk me through also one of the things that actually people are really hesitant about Hemlane on related to the turn is the portion of like the turnover repairs and that process, right? Walk me through what happened before and then how it's going with the agents who help you with the
Yeah,
turn.
so I think it's important to take a step back and understand what I see going on in the market. And mind you, I have worked with a lot of property managers across different states. I've worked with a lot of investors and turnkeys and everything else. And I see a few things. One, I do see property managers squeezing the margin out of deals, meaning they're increasing their markup rates from 10% to 20% on materials and labor. They sometimes have an in-house crew that they make up the rates and probably squeeze them there as well. I've also been involved in stories where the property manager is doing things. For example, if a tenant is in need of a new light bulb, there's no control. They just say yes. They send someone out there, and I spend $150 to repair a light bulb. Right. So there's a lot
Wow.
of inefficiencies that I think is very normal that you find now in the markets with traditional property managers. Not to mention all the random fees that they're adding on, like a bank tech fees and random other fees and servicing fees to make up more margin in their business. And so all that goes away with Hemlane, right? And that's what I've been telling my clients is like I'm not doing this for me to make money. I'm doing this for you to have a better experience scaling up your business, because you really do need this sort of system to, if you're a serious investor that wants to own more than 3 or 4 properties, you absolutely have to have a centralized system to scale up. It's not even a question. And so when it comes to maintenance and whatnot, the first thing is, not that I've seen, there's no markup on materials in labor, right? So
Yeah.
when I get a quote from a plumber from Hemlane, that's his cost. I see the materials, I see the cost. That is what it is. I'm not going to get a $800 quote with a $200 markup. It's very transparent, and it is what it is. So across the board, it's, again, transparency. It's faster, and you know what you're getting.
What do you feel like is the most difficult thing with Hemlane that you have to do with Hemlane that you wouldn't have to do with a traditional property manager? Like just letting people know, hey, here's something that you will have to do additional work or additional knowledge that you need in the industry of property management that you may
Sure.
have to do with Hemlane and you wouldn't have to do with a traditional manager.
Well, so let me just, I've definitely handled maintenance issues or tenant issues over my phone while on a beach using Hemlane. So it is definitely possible to do that. And I sincerely think that, most of the communication that you have to do anyways with a traditional property manager is the same amount in Hemlane with maybe a little bit more. But it's not a grave amount more of I guess, hand holding, if you will. The one thing, and I haven't experienced it yet, so I can't talk to it, but the one thing that I do get nervous about is, how would Hemlane handle an eviction? Right now,
Okay.
traditionally, I have properties in pro landlord states, so it's great. But Alabama, right, 7-day eviction period. If a tenant is late on rent, maybe you can answer this. How do you all handle the eviction process?
Yeah. Well, there's no one way to handle evictions. And there's various different steps you need to take as a real estate investor to understand, where do I think this eviction is going to go and what is the most affordable way for me to do it. And let me provide an example. You have an eviction. I'm going to do two extreme cases. You have an eviction in San Francisco with a tenant who knows that it's a tenant friendly place, and you have an illegal in-law unit and you decided to rent it anyways. In that particular case, it's go directly to a real estate attorney and they're going to help you with the process, because this tenant could fire something back at you, right? You need much more local expertise and advice than just having a process server. Now, another extreme would be maybe property in Texas where you are, Tom. And you say, hey, the tenant is just habitually late. They pay late. I know they're going to pay it, but they always pay late. And there's always that scare of, are they going to pay it? Is it going to creep from the 7th to the 8th to the 9th? I want to let them know that rent is due on the 1st and late by the 2nd, and the late fee kicks in on the 4th. So I'm going to serve a notice sooner. In that case, we do work obviously with partners like Rocket Lawyer to provide you at no additional cost with an eviction template. You fill it out and you pay a process server $40 or $50 to serve the notice. As long as there's some project management, that gives the investor the peace of mind. I can only think of one case where the tenant was not communicating with us, and we actually had to bring a full service property manager into that property. It was a case where the tenant just wouldn't communicate, wouldn't pick up their phone, wouldn't do anything. But for the most part, if a tenant is communicating with you and you give them options and you figure out what is the most affordable and best way for it to be a win-win across the board in a really unfortunate situation, where at least it's the least amount of damage to me as a real estate investor. Sure. And, we get the tenants out of there. We found it to be a pretty smooth process regardless of where you are located.
Yeah, I think this goes back to the point that, when I first started with Hemlane years ago, I think there was a bigger gap naturally to the traditional property manager than to the technology. Over time, it's obviously, grown leaps and bounds. And it's if I'm a traditional property manager, I think my value proposition to the market is, it's not, if it is greater than Hemlane, it's not a whole lot. I'll tell you that much. So you're bridging the gap very closely, and for a fraction of the price, right?
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things people always ask, should I use Hemlane? And really, it's a personal decision, right? If you want that white glove service where the property manager does everything for you, right? And they're having those communications with tenants and don't have to think about it. There are some great property managers out there who do it. But to your point, Tom, a lot of times the technology can get you 80% of the way there. Technology plus our operations team, because don't get me wrong, we have people, humans involved in everything, like the repair coordination. We
Yeah,
still have repair coordinators who are troubleshooting with tenants, picking up the phone, talking to the
sure.
tenants. The big thing with technology is knowing you can't take the person out of the equation, but how do you optimize and make the person who's in the equation more effective throughout the entire process? And that's what we try to do always with the
But I think,
technology.
I think though, again, just from my experience of, I've been doing this thing for 11, 12 years now. You know, these are things that I want to know. Like, I want to know how much I'm being charged for a water heater, right?
Yeah.
I want to know who's doing it, how many quotes have been reviewed. Is it just one quote and you're just saying yes to it? Again, who's moving them into my property? What's their job? Their credit score. I want to know these things. Uh, Ken McElroy, he's a very famous guy, 10,000 doors or whatever. He has, I think he has like one of the lowest eviction rates of like any person in the market. And I think he says it's either him or I mean, I doubt it's him anymore, but they basically call the final tenant to say before they can move into the house to make sure that they're a legitimate person, not just an application online. And because of that, he's been able to reduce his eviction rate substantially. And again, it's all
Yeah.
about turn, right? I'm spending probably $2,500 or more per turn, and I'm missing out on 4 to 6 weeks of rent, right? So, and I tell people too, it's like, don't try to gouge people with 4% price increases on rents. Just keep someone in there, pay down your mortgage, collect the cash flow, and they take care of your house. I do
Yep.
annual walkthroughs. I do some maintenance on the filters of the HVAC, uh, pick up, or clean up any leaks every year. I take care of the property, take care of my tenant. They take care of the property, and everyone's happy. That's a sustainable model.
Yep.
Going willy nilly and trusting these property managers, which I've only been able to trust one, and that was in Indiana, but it came at a price. And even they, occasionally would screw up at times. So across the board, it makes complete sense to go digital. And on top of that, I can't tell you how many times I've had to email property managers and ask where the rent is. Day 14 of the month. Hey, where is the rent? Oh, we had a holiday. We're doing the accounting a week late. That's constantly. So you're tracking down your payments. It's just a mess, right? And the thing is, if you're a big investor and you're across many states, you're dealing with many property managers. So
Yeah.
again, there's like no succinct or centralized way, and each of them has their own way of doing P&Ls. So tax time's a burden. I mean, it's just a pain in the butt. Again, one centralized system, more efficient, it's cheaper, and it's again probably 90% of the overall experience of a traditional manager, anyways. So
Yeah, and one of the things with the people component is ability to select who you work with. So that was one thing that was super important with us on the leasing side. We have had agents and partners come to us and say, can we be your exclusive property management partner in, Cleveland, Ohio, or whatever it may be, where we do all the leasing for you, we're your local support. And for us, one thing that's really important is optionality, right? Where you're not locked into an annual contract with someone, where if things aren't working or they took too long to lease the place, you kind of feel like you have those handcuffs on. It is really important to us in the design and how we built it to say, no, you get to choose who's going to be the best for you. And if there's questions or concerns about that, you can always meet with another agent locally in that area to make sure you are getting that service. And I think that has really helped for us to give that confidence. If you don't have properties in just one area, but in multiple areas, you'll eventually be able to find the person you want to be with. Like our match rate is over 90% for leasing
yeah, I
agents.
mean, look, I have a property
Yeah.
in Muncie, Indiana, and for any of you that don't know where that is, which most of you won't, it's an hour outside of Indianapolis, kind of in the boonies. And Hemlane found an agent who has been mine for 3 years now, and she's fantastic. So if you can find someone there, I believe you could probably find someone almost anywhere.
Yeah, it took us a long time to get the right outreach and qualification questions to make sure that we have the right ones. But over 90% of the time, they're always for life. The agent and the owner are together. And sometimes an owner comes to us and says, "Hey, can you rematch me?" Or sometimes an agent says, "This isn't the right owner for me. We don't match it." And that's a personality thing that goes with any service business. And we just make sure to accommodate it to make sure everyone's always happy.
Yep, agreed.
What do you wish that that we could make better on Hemlane?
So candidly, I don't know if you have one in the works, but a very fluid app on the phone would be really nice. I mean, most of my stuff's automated, so it's pretty seamless. I can notify when my rents are coming in, and if they don't, I check out why. But yeah, a phone app would go a long way.
Yep. And that is not in the immediate works, but definitely on the roadmap for the next 2 years here.
I mean, really, because I do get notified both text and email if there's something that comes up, and I just open it up and check it out. So it's kind of the same thing, but I don't even know what you would do with an app that you couldn't do over the phone.
I think it's the repair coordination. When we send the text message, you have to open it up versus getting a swipe notification for it to respond. That's what we hear a lot. So there will definitely be improvement on that. But you are right. We do send text messages to everyone.
Yeah. But again, I've done that while at the beach. So it's, definitely possible.
Great. Fantastic. Any other closing thoughts on Hemlane and about the product?
I mean, so, I'll just say, like, I asked you to do this testimonial because I think it's really important for the market, right? Again, I'm just seeing a lot of bad practices by property managers today. And my clients come to me all the time, not very happy with their current solution. I introduce them to you, and from what I can tell, most of them are very happy, right? And again, I think about something like if you had 5 different companies and you had 5 different accountants, but at the end of the day, your personal, bank statements would actually mattered. You would have a pain in the butt trying to coordinate all of the work from 5 different accountants. You would have one accountant. And that goes with, legal services. It goes with anything, any company. So to have a variety of properties with different property managers, not centralized, blows my mind. I worked with property managers before that I literally could not understand the P&L. Like, I don't know how things even tied. And I have like an MBA in finance and everything. Yeah. I could not break down the P&L for the life of me. So, and that costs a lot of money. I've had to spend hours with accountants trying to make it happen. So my point is, if you're a serious investor, I really think you need to think about scaling up your operations. And this platform is essential to doing that.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Tom. Really enjoyed your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.